With us now is former Defense Intel Agency officer Rebecca Koffler. Rebecca, what are your thoughts tonight on the incredible symbolism and the messaging that we saw here tonight from the Commander-in-Chief on the Army's 250th birthday?
Donald Trump just spoke to reporters outside the White House for the first time since his failed birthday party. And Donald Trump has been furious ever since, so you can expect his reaction to their questions was not so great. And yeah, it was an absolute disaster. Trump throwing a tantrum, melting down when addressing his parade and giving one of the craziest statements I have heard from him in a long time. We are going to get into it. But before we do, I also want to start with a clip this morning from Senator Adam Schiff, who addressed one of the questions Donald Trump has asked, and that's about the situation in L.A. He gave an important update, and then we're going to get into Trump's complete and insane meltdown.
There to help out during earthquakes and floods and fires. We have a very special bond of trust with the National Guard. And so to see it misused this way, to potentially erode that trust, we also venerate the Marines, but to call in the Marines for no other reason, I think, than to add fuel to the fire is a terrible abuse of the military.
So, Senator, let me ask you about that. President Trump's decision to deploy the National Guard, the Marines, despite the fact that California Governor Gavin Newsom said he did not need that, did not want that. President Trump said the city would have, quote, burned to the ground without his aid. Do you think local officials had that situation under control?
Yes, I do. And, you know, let's call the president's statement what it is, and that's just a flat-out lie. The idea that Los Angeles would have burnt to the ground, it's absurd. These demonstrations were taking place in a multi-block area in a city that is 500 square miles. Our police and our sheriff's office and our highway patrol are more than capable of dealing with this. And if they won't, and they weren't, then the mayor and the governor would request the help of our guard. That was not done. It was not necessary. And I think this is just Donald Trump doing what he wanted to do in the first administration, which was essentially use the military for domestic law enforcement to make himself look tough. In the first administration, there were at least a few people in the cabinet of some independents who could say, no, Mr. President, that's a lawless idea, that's a stupid idea. But there's no one in this current administration to tell the president that's a stupid idea. It will make matters worse. And there are nothing but sycophants, the Stephen Millers and the Kristi Noems and all the rest of them. And so we are seeing this terrible escalation, this increasing lawlessness. The district court was right to find it lawless. Now that Marines are engaged in an arrest, at least one arrest and detention, then that will be challenged too, and I think that too will be found.
Donald Trump has been facing down loss after loss, defeat after defeat, humiliation after humiliation. Of course, not just in the courts or in Congress, on the streets in D.C. across the country, but they just keep adding up. So it would be no surprise that in classic Donald Trump fashion, he would try to find some way to spin all these failures as a big win and do it in connection to one of his pet issues. And that is exactly what we saw. Not just his White House claiming 250,000 people showed up to his birthday. It wasn't even a parade. I want to call it a parade, but it wasn't because it was such a failure, which is that the number of people they're saying were at the parade or in D.C., because I think in D.C. that figure is a little bit more likely. But Trump was asked about his parade, and the response he gave about the weather and climate change will floor. You look at how he tries to spin this in his ridiculous tantrum.
So we're going to Canada. Last night was a tremendous success with a fantastic audience. It was supposed to rain. They gave it a 100% chance of rain, and it didn't rain at all. It was beautiful. And so I asked, if they gave it 100% chance, right? 100% it was going to rain like crazy, and it didn't rain at all. How did they predict 100 years out and 50 years out or 200 years out? They didn't do too well, the weather people, last night, but it was beautiful.
And Prime Minister Netanyahu on the same page concerning how to deal with Iran.
Well, we get along very well, and I will tell you that I think you have great respect for each other.
Can you give us a leader for solution?
Go ahead, what?
It's not for him. Mr. President, can you give us a sense of what de-escalate the situation between Iran and Israel?
Well, I hope there's going to be a deal. I think it's time for a deal, and we'll see what happens. But sometimes they have to fight it out, but we're going to see what happens. I think there's a good chance there'll be a deal. What? So the protesters, if we didn't have the National Guard on call and ready, they would rip Los Angeles apart. They come and they check and they say, is the National Guard going to be there? And if the National Guard's being there, they don't even show up.
Have you asked Israel to pause their airstrikes into Iran?
Well, I don't want to say that.
Mr. President, do you expect to have some trade deals announced at the G7 summit coming up?
Look, we have our trade deals. All we have to do is send a letter. This is what you're going to have to pay. But I think we'll have a few new trade deals. Yeah.
Will the U.S. support the defense of Israel? Will the U.S. continue to support Israel in its defense?
We do. Yeah. Thank you very much, everybody.
So Trump said that people did come to his parade because it was supposed to rain, which it did, but it didn't again, which it did. And because of that, because of Donald Trump's inaccurate reading of the weather forecast and the weather in front of him, climate change isn't real. Those are the dots. That's the weave that Trump just tried to connect there because he couldn't see it raining. It was the photos, the glass in front of them covered in rain. It was wet throughout D.C. There's water on the ground. You could see like people stepping in mud in the very small crowd in front of Trump. Maybe that's why they left so soon, but that's why climate change isn't real. Not only is this a complete tantrum, and of course, Donald Trump responded to the deals he's made, but it just shows his cognitive decline. It is crazy that this is the guy who is running our country based off his whims. There is no structure in place anymore to our government. Republicans are spineless and have it folded and have allowed Donald Trump to consolidate all power in the Oval Office, where a man without a brain is directing traffic and all the cars are crashing and some of them are Teslas and those Teslas are on fire. Like, that is the analogy of the current state of the country, and it's only seeing the stakes raised as Donald Trump moves towards intimidation as his means to get things done. And of course, we saw that with his attack on Senator Alex Padilla, who responded in an interview this morning. And I want to take a look.
But as you're hearing more and more stories of undocumented, long-term residents of the United States who are otherwise law-abiding, working hard, paying taxes, raising families, and frankly, working in jobs that under the first Trump administration, when the COVID pandemic hit, were deemed essential. Right? Workers in restaurants, in agricultural fields, in healthcare, construction, etc. That's who's being targeted now, and that's why there's so much fear and terror in communities, not just in Los Angeles, but throughout the country.
So the vast majority of immigrants in California, we went and we looked at the stats. They are in this country legally, but Pew Research says your state has nearly 2 million undocumented, and they make up about 7% of the entire labor force in some of those farming and service jobs that you talked about. Since the Trump administration this week told ICE to pull back a bit when it comes to enforcement, do you see that as a step in the right direction, and do you know what triggered that decision? Yeah,
so I don't know exactly what triggered that decision. I'll take it. Is it a step in the right direction? It's at least a baby step. And let's hope there's more to follow, because they're responding to what I and others have been saying for months and months, frankly, years, going back to the first Trump administration. You know, you want stats? Let's talk about stats. The state of California, the most populous state in the nation, the most diverse state in the nation, home to more immigrants than any state in the nation, mostly documented, some undocumented. This is the same California that is the largest economy of any state in the nation, fourth largest economy in the world, not despite the immigrant population, but thanks to the contributions of so many immigrants as workforce, as consumers, consumers and as entrepreneurs. So again, focus on the dangerous, violent criminals, no disagreement there, but the folks who are otherwise law-abiding, tax-paying, and enriching communities, there's got to be a better way, a pathway towards legalization, a pathway to citizenship for dreamers, farm workers, and others.
Well, that is hoping for movement in Congress that would take some time. I did note it was interesting to see in the House, the Republican Hispanic Conference put forth a letter asking for a breakdown of how many criminals were among those actually deported.
And that was one of the key questions they had for the secretary. Of course, she had no data, had no answer, promised to follow up. I hope. We'll see.
You would think it would be hard to find anyone in our government who had a more difficult week than Alex Padilla, considering Donald Trump sent his thugs after him. But honestly, I think no one in our federal government has had a worse week than Trump humiliated on his birthday. Melania, Marco Rubio, Joni Ernst, Pete Hegseth, falling asleep at his party. No one showed up losing in court. Gavin Newsom, mocking him. Maybe Stephen Miller's had a worse week because Stephen Miller, I hope, is always having a bad week, but geez, just not a good time. And funny enough, you know, Donald Trump's birthday party wasn't much of a party except for one person. And I am so glad if this is your first time seeing it. Because a host at Fox got on the air last night after Donald Trump's failed parade, and they clearly had one too many Pete Hegseth, if I think you get what I mean. They had a couple of Janine Puros before getting on air, and oh my lord, we just have to end with this clip because it is insanity.
With us now is former Defense Intel Agency officer Rebecca Koffler. Rebecca, what are your thoughts tonight on the incredible symbolism and the messaging that we saw here tonight from the Commander-in-Chief on the Army's 250th birthday?
I am so excited, Emily and Lucas Tomlinson, everybody, like, this is incredible. Finally, the United States is back. I want to really thank all of our Army, Navy, and Air Force officers who have been sacrificing their lives, literally. Their families have been contributing to the mission. Most of the time for the past quarter of a century, because of the mismanagement of the administrative states, they've been fighting these foreign wars. But with our new in chief, Donald J. Trump, they are prioritizing America first. And I want to thank these officers for all of these sacrifices and all of the hardships that their families have been doing. Lawrence Jones, you are doing, you're rocking, man. Like, you guys are incredible. Lucas,
thank you.
I want to thank
Thank you so much, Rebecca. Thank you, and thank you for your service, too. Well, our final thoughts on this historic and patriotic celebration when we return.
Can't wait.
Are you serious? What are they doing at Fox? Like, how is this where they have fallen? Like, the mighty haven't fallen. It's Fox, not very mighty. But what all I gotta say is, maybe she should be Secretary of State. She's got all the qualifications for the Trump administration. She's clearly crazy. She works at Fox. So I wouldn't be surprised if maybe next chief of staff after Susie Wilds, that lady with her wine box. What are we doing? This is insanity. That's a great example of why we need independent media. Because I can promise you, while I'm doing these videos, I'm not Pete Hegseth. My gosh, we're gonna keep calling out these people. And if you want to support, as always, you can hit that subscribe button, leave a like on this video, and if you stuck around to the end, you can drop a blue heart in the comments. Until next time, I'll see you soon.